Hi, welcome to today's episode, which is a slightly different type of episode to what I usually put out on the podcast because I'm on holiday for a couple of weeks. And what I thought would be a really good idea is to share a couple of conversations that I've had as a guest on other people's podcasts. Because when I'm a guest on other people's podcasts, it can be quite different to me interviewing somebody else for the Live Healthy Now podcast or me doing a solo episode. And I also think the topics that I have discussed on other people's episodes can be really interesting because it's their podcast and their agenda and objective. And so we sometimes cover what I do in a slightly different way to how I might have shared it. So today's episode is a brilliant one that I recorded at the end of last year, 2023. And Louise Digby put the episode out right at the beginning of January because she thought it was really appropriate for us starting out our 2024 year when so many women set out a new year with goals of losing weight, going on a diet, making changes to how they eat, to eat healthier. And so we delved into the topic of diets and diet culture. And Louise's podcast is the Thriving Metabolism. It's a brilliant podcast. And Louise is a specialist in helping women in midlife to lose weight. And I loved having this conversation with her. And I know Louise and her audience took so much from it. We got some really good feedback. And the way I talked about diets and relationship with food and the diet culture and so on is in a way that I haven't talked about it on this podcast before. So I hope you're going to find the episode really interesting. It goes quite deep into mindset and how our beliefs are formed in early childhood. And those beliefs mean we've got all of these stories running around about food and eating and our weight and our self-worth. So take a listen, enjoy it, and hopefully it's going to help you rethink that word diet and rethink what you might be doing if you're circling around from one diet to another and feeling that diet misery that many of us, certainly me, have experienced for most of my adult life. So please enjoy the podcast and enjoy listening to me being interviewed as a guest rather than the usual host. Your beliefs create your thoughts, which create your behaviours, which are the actions, which equal your life. So that becomes the story of your life. See, and your habits are those behaviours and actions. You know, I know you know all of this, Louise. Your habits account for almost 50% of everything you do every day. And we know our subconscious mind is around 95 to 97% of our thoughts and behaviours a day as well.
How many times did you fall off the wagon last year? Have you wondered why you can't just stick to a diet and hit your goals? Do you wish that you could stop the self-sabotage and follow through with your goals? Today, we have the wonderful Nicola Mercer joining us. Nicola is a transformational health coach, helping women to feel confident and know their self-worth, using her success framework of mindset, movement, nutrition, sleep, and stress. Nicola unwraps the true value of your health so that you can thrive and live a healthy, strong, vibrant life for the rest of your life. She is a certified health coach and qualified personal trainer, specializing in women's health, hormones, and menopause. Nicola supports female entrepreneurs in corporate to know the value of their health, and that's when you create the right habits for you. You build your self-worth and self-belief so that you can create a life you love living. Today, we're diving deeper than food and exercise. If you want to make 2024 the year that you achieve true transformation, do not miss this one. Welcome to the Thriving Metabolism, where it's my mission to empower you so that you and your metabolism thrives and you never have to go through diet misery again. I'm Louise Digby, registered nutritional therapist, women's weight loss expert, and founder of the Nourish Method to Lasting Fat Loss. Okay, well, welcome to the podcast, Nicola. I'm so excited to have you here and to talk to you about taking a more holistic approach to weight loss.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Louise.
So, we both have a very similar philosophy when it comes to health and weight loss, I think, which is about there's just so much more to it than how much you eat and how much you exercise. And, what we both see in our clients is that you have to take this holistic approach to be able to get results that are actually going to last and be meaningful for the individual. So I'm really interested to know what that actually means to you. Like, what does taking a holistic approach to weight loss actually mean in practice?
Yeah, I think there's kind of two elements to that. One is that I like to take what I call a whole person approach in looking at everything in your lifestyle and how to create a really strong set of habits that build strong health across every element of your life. Because I have 5 pillars in my framework, which are mindset, movement, nutrition, sleep, and stress. And all of those 5 things will impact weight loss and beyond weight loss, when you want to manage your weight and eat healthily. So that's one aspect of it. And then the other thing that I think comes under that holistic umbrella is to know that the food that you eat plays a much bigger part in how you feel than simply connected to your weight. And it's making that shift that, food is about volume and how much you can eat and impacting directly your weight. And a lot of people only think of a very tunnel vision like that, to flipping it to the fact that food is fuel for everything, and moving the weight aside and thinking about it in terms of how you feel both physically and mentally. So really looking at the role food plays in your whole life, and that's the connection to that word holistic. So, it's those two angles that I like to come at it from. One, very much educating you on the lifestyle and all of the factors in how you live that can impact your weight, but also the other piece of the role food itself plays in how you feel holistically in your life. So that's how I talk about it.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I see so many women who, not just women, men and women, who really use food to, just try and manage their calories. And it's all about how much they're eating and how they can, most diets are just like another creative way to eat less, aren't they? And also, a lot of people only see exercise as a way of burning calories, and they look at the workout as, what workout is going to get me the most bang for my buck, what's going to burn as many calories as possible. And actually, when you can shift to looking at food as nourishment and exercise as like a gift for your body and something that builds strength, then it's a very different experience of that health journey. So how do you help people to actually shift that mindset? Because people get so stuck, and I always find, they might start looking at things a bit differently, but then life gets a bit stressful and they default back to burn calories, eat less calories. So how do you actually get people to shift that mindset?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because for me, a lot of people come with the goal of wanting to lose weight, and they might have a specific number in mind. And when we start working through my program, or just the framework that I use, if it's not part of the program, we start to find that the weight loss isn't the goal. The goal is something else. So that's a really important shift that I found, works. It's worked in my life and it's worked for clients as well, in realizing that the goal itself isn't the weight loss. The goal is often to like yourself, to have self-worth, to feel confident. But that often isn't the goal. The goal is instead what that confidence and self-worth will bring, which might be going for a promotion at work, or leaving corporate to set up your own business, or leaving some of the baggage behind that maybe you've carried for a long time over personal relationship choices and how that's impacted your family. These are real examples that I've had working with people. And so then the mindset shift is then about how they're going to feel and why that's important to them. And then the way you eat becomes a part of the process of achieving that real goal. And the weight loss becomes secondary. So the goal isn't any longer the weight loss. The goal is, I want to feel this way, and I'm going to feel this way by changing the way that I eat, which is going to help me to lose weight. And, the reality is some people are overweight and perhaps, bordering or already are obese, which can lead to lots of other health implications and risks. Or perhaps, the weight that they're carrying is impacting their ability to have confidence and perform at work and make certain life choices and so on. So it's anchoring them to that why the thing they want really matters to them. And then the way you eat and the diet, if you like. So I do use the phrase diet, but I educate and try to change belief systems that it's not a temporary thing you go on. We all have a diet. Your dog has a diet. Your goldfish has a diet. Living creatures all have a diet. But you're on it. That's it for life. It's a diet to enable you to survive. So educating them on how to build the right diet for them that works to achieve those goals. So when then things get difficult, because as you mentioned, lots of people can think, oh, this is too hard. I'm never going to lose the weight, especially when people have a bigger amount of weight to lose. It can feel so far from reach and become something that creates a fear, which freezes you right where you are. Whereas when you're clear on what it is you're trying to create for your life and how you feel and why that matters to you, that's the mindset shift that I think is really powerful. And then there's obviously lots of tools you can use and things you can do to create that different mindset to where you are right now, about being this person who feels energized and feels vibrant and enjoys chatting with people at work, or whatever it may be. So there's lots of different ways you can then create tools to bring that into day-to-day life and creating habit change.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I think so often we can really skip over the goal setting side of things and think, okay, I want to lose weight, I want to lose 2 stone, and then you feel like you've set a goal. But actually going so much deeper into it and thinking about what that's going to give you and how that's going to make you feel and how it's going to impact your life. Because you're right, that's what we want, isn't it? We want to feel more confident. We want to feel, like we've got more energy to keep up the kids, or, whatever it might be. It's not actually really about the weight loss. And I definitely see that transition in my clients. A lot of them come in very weight focused, but by the end of it, once they've spent some time working on their mindset, but also just taking an approach that's focused on nourishment as opposed to deprivation and starvation, it just seems to help you shift towards thinking about your health and well-being and how you feel, as opposed to just what do the scales say, which is really freeing, because only being focused on the scales, is really demoralizing, because inevitably your weight fluctuates and it makes you feel like you're doing something wrong if you don't lose weight 1 week. But that's going to be like the biggest thing to throw you off track, isn't it? Because, you likely are doing the right thing. It's just normal and natural for your weight to fluctuate. So I really love that focus on goals and how we feel. And it's totally part of a holistic approach to weight loss. And I also think that, what you were saying about diets being very temporary usually, and actually, you know, if you want to see sustainable results, then you've got to stick with it. And that might sound really scary for some people, you know, oh my God, I've got to eat a certain way for the rest of my life. But actually, it's not about eating one way for the rest of your life. You know, your diet will likely change as your needs change as you get older. But it's about taking a journey that, you know, doesn't end, because once it ends, then the weight just goes back on. So obviously a big part of that is adjusting your behaviors and your habits. So what role do your habits and your behaviors kind of take in your wellness journey, and how do we go about truly working on them?
Your habits are everything. So I use kind of I have a visual of this that helps clients to really understand this, which is your beliefs create your thoughts, which create your behaviors, which are the actions, which equal your life. So that becomes the story of your life. See, and your habits are those behaviors and actions. You know, I know you know all of this, Louise. Your habits account for almost 50% of everything you do every day. And we know our subconscious mind is around 95 to 97% of our thoughts and behaviours a day as well. You know, so our habits are things that we do on repetition, that we've done consistently enough, and our brain has created a program to do that thing when a cue comes into play. So when there's something that triggers your brain to go, oh, this is the response, this is the behaviour that I put into place. It's got that habit there. So your habits are absolutely everything, because sure, we've all been there where there's a change you've wanted to make and you really want it and it's just not happening, because, you know, you automatically open the bottle of wine when you come in from work at 6 p.m. or you automatically go to the biscuit tin when you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed and stressed, and you think, God, why did I do that? I'm supposed to be on a diet. I'm supposed to be losing weight. You know, those habits are so powerful. I do call them your superpower. So building the right habits for you is your superpower. That's the way to create change, because as I said, your behaviours and actions create the reality of your life. So I very much work with people. Habits is my specialty, if you like. I thread that through everything that I do, because you need to create those habits so that these behaviours become an integral part of who you are. And that's the key message and aim of what changing your health is actually about, is it being who you are. Because when you are having to remember and force yourself and think constantly about what to eat, to exercise, and then beating yourself up when you haven't stuck to it and done it right in the way you think it should be, that's not going to lead to a habit, and it's not going to lead to sustainable behaviours. Whereas when you do thing gradually, and there's obviously lots of different ways that you build habits, it becomes a part of who you are. And then, you know, I'm not remembering to go to the gym every day or work out. It's a part of who I am, and so much a part that even if I go on holiday, I find ways to move. It might not be going to the gym, but I still move and I'm active and do things that I know I want to do, because it's become a part of me at my very core. So it's about identity change, essentially, you know, and building these behaviours and actions that are automatic, that are just who you are, so that it's a way of life. As you said, there is no finish line. You don't achieve health and then that's it, job done, box ticked, I'm there. Health is something that we have to do forever. And likewise, habits are only habits whilst you're doing the thing. If you're not doing it, then it's not a habit. It's disappeared and stored somewhere in the depths of your subconscious mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So why is it so challenging to make behavior change and to change habits? And, you know, is it just a case of you've got to put in the effort up front and do it consistently, and then eventually it'll become a habit? Or is there kind of more that we can do to be cementing some new habits?
It does take work. It does take effort. and consistency. No change is easy, whatever change that is in your life. But just to kind of backstep a little bit, the reason why we keep doing things that we might not want to do, that are not in alignment with the goals we have, because as humans, we're designed to survive. We are here to survive and to reproduce. That's our physiological, biological goal as humans. And the way we achieve that is by using as little energy as possible so that we conserve energy for when we need it, which obviously many, many thousands of years ago was to run away from the lion, back in our ancestral days. And so our brain, we're still wired and built like that. So our brain uses, it's the subconscious part, as we said, that's the bulk, 95+% a day of what we think and do is from the subconscious mind, because that's using as little energy as possible and conserving the energy to survive. So when things trigger your brain, like 6 o'clock, key in the door, I've arrived home, your brain sees that as a cue to, at this point, you go and get the wine, because that's going to give you a reward. It's going to give the dopamine and make you feel good and so on. So, it's conserving the energy for survival by using these, I liken habits to a file in a filing cabinet, the very old-fashioned big metal filing drawers that you would pull out, and you'd have all of those metal hanging paper files. That's what you have in your subconscious mind. And so the brain goes, oh, now it's time for this file. And obviously it's happening in a nanosecond. So that's why it can be really difficult, when you think, well, I do want to be healthy, but why do I keep doing these? Because your brain is doing what it's designed to do: survive, conserve energy. So you need to create those new habits, which does take effort, but you can make that an easier process by getting clear on the goal, why you want the goal, why it matters, anchoring yourself to that, and building the belief that you can do that. That's a big part of that mindset change, is knowing that you are capable of change. And then there's lots of tools that you can do to make the habit change easier. Reminders, habit stacking's a great one. So picking something that is already a habit in your life. Maybe it's popping the kettle on first thing every morning. Maybe it's brushing your teeth, and putting the new habit on the back of that thing. Reminders in your phone, doing it with other people, creating an environment so it's visual. There's lots of different ways, but it does take effort. There's a reality to that, isn't there? That anything you want to do differently, you're going to have to make that happen. But there are ways that you can help to solidify the behaviour as a habit, to get to that place I've mentioned of it just happening automatically because it's become a part of your character and identity, if you like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it sounds like you need to make some effort up front, but you can make that easier by getting really clear on your goals and what the real why is for you. And then there are tools that we can use to make it easier as well, like habit stacking and setting reminders and that sort of thing. I definitely find habit stacking really helpful because, like you say, there are certain things in your day that happen every day without fail, like making a cup of tea in the morning and brushing your teeth. And, I know for me, I was always really bad at taking supplements, so just would never remember to do it. But I kind of stacked it on top of my brushing your teeth habit. And now I find it much, much easier. It's not without fail, but much, much easier to sustain that habit. And I found that different things work for different people, and I'm sure people's brains are wired in different ways. So it's just about trying different things to see what works for you. What about the relationship with food side of things? First of all, for some people that might be a new term. So what does it mean when we are talking about someone's relationship with food?
It's what it means to them in their life. And I think I'd say everyone has a relationship with food. It's a different relationship. There are definitely people who don't necessarily enjoy eating. You know, food is just something that they have to do to obviously have energy and survive. And it doesn't necessarily have an attachment, but that's still their relationship with food. I think when we talk about it, we're often looking at it from the place of when people do have, whether it's an emotional attachment to it, you know, a belief system that of what food does to them. And, you know, certainly for me and my story, food is something that I love. I have lots of emotional attachments. I'm not someone who eats when they're stressed or eats when they're emotional and sad. I do both. You know, some people are usually, oh, I'm an emotional eater when I get down, or I eat when I'm stressed, and I eat when I'm happy as a reward. Unfortunately, I'm kind of all of those, because my relationship with food is something that it's a very big part of my life, of who I am, what I enjoy doing. So it's very individual, but there are commonalities amongst those types of things, you know, like stress, emotion, whether that's sadness or happiness, using it as a reward, using it as punishment. So, you know, the relationship is, what does food mean to you? And then you have got those people who it's like, it's something I do. And honestly, I don't really like eating out because I don't get much pleasure from it. And I just eat, and it doesn't matter what I eat and so on. It's just simply food. But then there are people like me who gets a lot of pleasure from that. And then it's obviously looking at where those beliefs have originated from, and why does food become something that you do to reward yourself or punish yourself or comfort yourself and so on. So yeah, it's a huge, huge thing, because again, when you're looking towards change and what people might want to achieve, whether it's weight loss or feeling generally healthier by eating, you know, more nutritiously, that relationship with food then plays a huge part, because regardless of that goal, you know, you kind of in a boxing ring, if you like, with the goal on one side and knowing that's how you want to feel, but then you've got this very deep relationship, because for most of us, you know, as adults, we've had that relationship for decades, usually from when we were a child or perhaps early teenager, and so on. So yeah, it's massive, and it's something that then can really impact your progress and habit change and the success that you are looking to achieve with your goals.
I think most diets just assume that someone's going to be able to implement the changes, and there's not going to be any kind of resistance around that. But obviously they completely ignore, you know, someone's relationship with food. So what do you think, how much of a difference does it make to someone when they work on that relationship with food and they manage to get themselves to a really good place when it comes to food?
Oh, it's massive. You know, as you said, diets, it just giving someone a set of parameters with regard to the food type and quantity that they eat. It isn't looking at who that person is and what's going on underneath that. And so when you work on that relationship and belief system, and help someone to look at why they perhaps make some of those choices and what's behind that decision to make those choices, it really helps them to shift. So to put it into kind of practical terms and give an example to help people understand this, if you had someone who is eating emotionally when things aren't good in their life, you know, when perhaps something's gone wrong at work or in their relationship, they've had an argument with their spouse perhaps, and then they turn to food and it's, you know, chocolate or sweets, and that's what they do. And they are trying to improve their health and they're trying to make better choices and improve their overall diet and so on. They're doing that. But then the situations arose and they've made that choice with the chocolate or sweets. And then they come and to a coach like us and they talk about it, and perhaps we get underneath it and hear that when they were kids, they were often, you know, told off a lot with their parents, and then perhaps their parents got angry, and then when their parent calmed down and thought about it, they'd take them to the shop to get some sweets because they'd upset them, and, you know, the parent perhaps realised they shouldn't have shouted and got angry as much as what they did. and that's real. You know, this happens in people's life. And at the time, you know, even as a parent, you don't think about the consequences of that. It's like, come on, let's go to the shop. Everything's better now. I shouldn't have shouted at you like that. Come on, do you want some chocolate? So that's instilled this really deep-rooted belief that when something's gone wrong and when you've fallen out with someone, then to make yourself feel better, you have chocolate and sweets. You know, so it's getting underneath that, why does that make you feel better, and realising that came from there. And then basically, I liken it to kind of a table, and you break those legs away from the table so that story falls apart, because you now know that you don't need those sweets and chocolate. You need what they are giving you, which is to feel good again and have those hormones released that help you to feel calm and know that it's not your fault perhaps, or that things can be fixed and made better. But you can do that through choosing a different solution to the sweets. And so you create a new, stronger table. And so there's often a lot of deep work there, because you'll know, there's people who can be eating great and making lots of changes to their diet and feeling really good. And then one thing goes wrong in their life, and that is it. And because they've then done that thing, whether it's the wine, the pizza, the chocolate, it's kind of like, that's it. I'm the person who will never lose weight. I'm the person that will never eat healthy because I always go for whatever it is. And so you really, really do need to work on this. And that's, the power of coaching, isn't it? And sometimes people need more than coaching. They need therapy instead, because of perhaps some trauma that's led to those beliefs. So on the peripheral, it might sound like, oh, you're an emotional eater. Oh, yeah, you always do that. And you're always trying to diet. But then when you get sad, you just turn to the sweet tin. But it's so much more than that. And that's the message, really, I'd say, is it's not about the fact that you've eaten the sweets. It's about the fact that you are believing you need those sweets to heal whatever it is that's going on underneath. And that's something that actually can be quite damaging in other ways, not because of the calories or the sugar, but psychologically in other ways without us knowing that. So it's quite deep, that, I hope that makes sense.
Definitely. I think it's really important to acknowledge how deep this relationship with food goes. Like you say, it's not just about the superficial, oh, I eat when I'm stressed, or I eat when I'm sad. It's about getting into those deeper meanings and the, things like trauma that could be really driving that, and starting to, do the self-healing and address those things at their core as much as you can, because otherwise you're just going to keep following the same patterns over and over again. And I think, particularly for people who find that they do just follow a pattern, maybe diet for a few weeks, and then as soon as something happens, they fall off the wagon. Those are people who would almost certainly benefit from really digging deeper into why that happens, because it's not because you're lazy, or because you don't try hard enough, or you don't have enough willpower. There's almost always more to it than that. Yeah. But in most cases, I don't know if you would agree with this, but I find in most cases, people are completely oblivious to those deep-rooted beliefs and experiences that really feed those behaviours.
Absolutely, because what those beliefs do is they create a story, and you believe that story. And again, it's all psychological because of how we are as humans. You create that story that is, this is the person I am for whatever reason. Maybe I'm just not someone who can cook. I'm someone who will always look like this. I'm someone who doesn't have the money to eat healthy. Those beliefs create that story, which creates your reality. And there's a film I was thinking of as you were talking there, Louise. I can't remember the name. I don't know if it was called Whale. It was a recent film that was really done so well. And the lead, it was basically about an obese guy who became housebound. He was a college lecturer. He's quite a big actor. It was a very, very well done, kind of like an indie style film. But it basically documented his journey, and it was based on a real life story. He was exceptionally overweight and became housebound, and even though he really wanted to change, it wasn't like you said that he was lazy or couldn't be bothered to cook, but he had these very deep-rooted beliefs that had led to him overeating and basically then punishing himself and abusing himself with food. Because yes, it's so complicated. And I think what I would just add on to all of this is, so many women especially spend so much of their life obsessing over the way they look and their weight and diet, and this, what we're talking about now, is what can really change that, because none of us should have to spend years depriving, restricting, worrying, making ourselves feel guilty. Life is short and life's for living, and so on, and yeah, maybe there's some self-acceptance work to do as well on our appearance and what it means to look and be a certain size and so on. But to work on these beliefs can be transformative and really create a very different way of living and feeling, which we all deserve to have.
Yeah, 100%. And going back to what you're saying about that film, I'm not sure of the film, but I was just thinking that's what we don't see enough of on television and TV shows, isn't it? We see programs like The Biggest Loser and My 600-Pound Life and those sorts of programs about people who go to the extremes to lose weight, and usually it's crazy diets, crazy exercise, or surgical procedures to get the weight off. But what we never see, and what there doesn't seem to be any shows on, is people who actually do the real work, not to discredit like the effort that those people have put in, but people who do the deep work, I should say, to work on their relationship with food and their beliefs around themselves and their food, and who get transformation that way. That's what I would love to see a TV show about, because that would be fascinating.
Oh, definitely. And I met someone actually who'd been on one of those programs, and she'd lost a lot of weight and her life changed and so on. And it changed for quite a while in the way she wanted it to. But then the weight came back on and she ended up in a really, really difficult place mentally. And she said there was no support for that change of beliefs and so on. And she's now in a much better place, thankfully. She hasn't lost the weight that she'd lost previously. She has lost weight and feels much healthier. But because of that shift she's done this time, as opposed to on the programme, it was really hard, and almost like an army style boot camp of what you had to do to just lose those numbers on the scale, and it being about the performance rather than the real life transformation. So yeah, and I think this is all stuff that has to change when it comes to health, full stop, why it's important and what it's about and how to do it, because there's very, very little support. The support's all there to fix the problem when the problem has already happened, but only to kind of fix it. I could get in a whole thing of this, with medicine in general, it's about giving something that sticks a plaster over the problem rather than really gets to the root and shifts the problem for good.
It's almost like the problem isn't the lifestyle, that's the symptom. The problem is the deep-rooted beliefs, and if we can work on that, then that is going to be what makes the world of difference. And I've definitely had quite a few clients who've come to me after having a gastric band or some sort of weight loss surgery, and the weight has just gone back on. They lost loads of weight, but it's gone back on. Now they cannot get it off. It's gone back on partly because of them not working on those deep-rooted beliefs that led to them gaining that weight in the first place, but also that extreme of, the extreme calorie restriction that comes with such a procedure damages their metabolism, and it doesn't address the kind of physiological imbalances that contribute to weight gain as well. So it's really sad to see someone who has invested the time, the money, whatever into such an extreme approach, and it hasn't worked for them in the long term because it hasn't got to that deeper problem. I also want to touch a little bit on some of the other parts of this holistic approach to weight loss. And I think sleep and stress are huge. So in your experience, how do things like sleep and stress kind of come into play when it comes to a healthy weight loss journey?
So there's a couple of things with both of those. One is the physiological impact of what's actually happening in your body because of perhaps lack of good quality sleep or overstress. The things that leads to hormonally can obviously then impact how your body is working, because we're just this big integral machine, which means that even if you're eating all of the right foods, you're not necessarily losing weight because things are happening physiologically within your body that's creating imbalance and inflammation and, you know, other problems. So I know you're the expert in all of this as well. There's lots of things that they can lead to, which mean even when you are eating nutritionally, it's still not, you know, giving you the results that you want. And even if those results aren't a drop of pounds on the scales, it might be just in how you feel. You know, you could think, well, I'm eating really well and I do go to the gym, but I just still don't feel well. And, you know, that could be because of what's happening through the stress and sleep. And then the other things that they lead to are lifestyle choices. So when you are highly stressed, the last thing you probably want to do after work is go home and cook something from scratch. You know, and again, it's tapping into the mindset and then those beliefs that, oh, well, tonight doesn't matter. I'm just going to get a takeaway on the way home because I've had a hard day, because you're telling yourself a story of when I'm stressed and when things are difficult, then I don't have to cook from scratch because it's too hard and too much effort. Sleep, practically, again, you know, when you haven't slept well, have you got the energy to go to the gym and work out or go for a nice long walk and really enjoy it? So those things impact your lifestyle choices and the habits that you have, because it can be really hard to meal plan and cook from scratch and do the food shop. And if perhaps you're just in that constant state of overwhelm and stress and you're running on that, you know, parasympathetic system of fight or flight where you're just, you know, on edge all of the time. And sleep practically impacts your hormones as well. You know, when you have less sleep, then ghrelin, the hunger hormone, increases, and leptin, the satiety, the hormone that makes you feel full, drops. So you can have around a 50% shift in how you feel. So then that leads to those different choices, which when we have those shifts in hormones, we often want the sugary, refined carbs, which, you know, we then tell ourselves we deserve because we're tired. And if you've ever been hungover, that's why you want that kind of food, because you are then running on very different levels of those two hormones. So yeah, absolutely lots of things, from just how you make choices for the rest of your lifestyle to then what it's actually practically doing within your body.
You're kind of fighting your hormones and also, you know, trying to find the energy to make the changes that you know decided you were going to make, and you're also just working against yourself, aren't you? You know, it's going to be that much more difficult to keep up with the habits. And I think for someone who is, you know, struggling with their sleep or highly stressed, I always suggest, you know, aside from working on those things, which is really important, but taking baby steps, because it's so difficult to change one thing, let alone change 10 things. And so, you know, I always find that if someone tries to overhaul everything, it's just so difficult to sustain. But if they can make one change and just see that through, then they're going to make more progress than if they tried to do 10 things, but, you know, had a bad week and they all kind of go out the window as soon as they get stressed or have a bad night's sleep.
Yeah, and the good thing is that these parts of that holistic lifestyle are intrinsically linked. So if, for example, right now you are sleeping really poorly, you are highly stressed, you're not making the best food choices, you don't have energy to work out, and that means your mind from the second you gain consciousness on a morning is in a pretty negative place about the way you feel and how your life is. if you, for example, just focused on how am I going to sleep better, when you do sleep better, your stress is likely to reduce. Your mindset is going to wake up with hopefully more positivity because you feel more energized, you've rested well, and then you're going to probably make better food choices and have a bit of energy to perhaps go for that walk at lunchtime. So you have these ripple effects where changing one thing will change how you feel in those other areas. And that's the magic of approaching it in this way. They are all interlinked, so that changing one thing changes the other. And then when you start to change that other thing that perhaps wasn't the focus you had at the beginning, which was sleep in this example, then maybe you go, actually, I'm quite enjoying getting outside a bit more and I'm going to do more of it. And before you know it, you've worked on exercising more without that being the goal. So it is incredible, the power that starts to come when you, as you say, focus on one thing. And I'm all about the small steps, even if it's sleep. Just start really small. Have a bigger goal of what the sleep goal is, but start really small to work towards that goal. And again, making it part of who you are for good, rather than just, oh, this week I'm not going to go on my phone at bedtime.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important for us to acknowledge that making one change has that trickle effect on everything else. Because so often when someone's trying to improve their health, they feel like they need to do everything, and they feel like, they're potentially not doing enough. But actually, if we acknowledge that working on one thing like sleep impacts everything else, then actually we're doing ourselves such a big favor by just focusing on one thing and doing it well, because it's going to make the rest of the journey easier. And I really think that getting good quality sleep is one of the most important things, because, like you said, if you're not sleeping enough, you're going to be hungrier, you're going to be less likely to follow through with habits, you're going to be less resilient to stress, your hormones are going to be disrupted, you're going to be more inflamed, more and more, like it impacts everything. So if we can just get ourselves sleeping better, then it has such a big impact on everything. So before we wrap up, I just want to ask you about one more thing, which is accountability. And I feel that accountability is something that can make a massive difference to particularly the early stages of someone's health journey when they're trying to cement new habits. But we certainly come across people who feel that they don't need it, and that may be true. They may be very highly motivated, but so often it isn't true. And actually they find that they can't be consistent unless they have someone to check in with, or someone to help pivot them or redirect them when challenges come up. So what impact do you find that having proper accountability has in someone's journey, and what does proper accountability actually look like?
It's huge. I think it's really difficult for most people to move forward and make lasting changes on their own. Again, it's just how we are as humans. I'm someone who is very good at keeping myself accountable. I know a lot of entrepreneurs struggle, for example, to work, especially when they work at home. I guess even if you're an employee working at home, there can be distractions. I'm very good at that, but it doesn't mean that I can make all of the changes that I want to make. Again, as humans, when we share what our goal is with someone else, we are 65% more likely to achieve that because we've shared it, and there's that thing inside of us that makes us not want to be judged, and we want people to know that we've done the thing we said. So again, it's all subconscious. That means now we've committed to it, someone else knows about it. And then when we not just share but plan to follow up, maybe that's through calls and sharing a tracker, or just having a conversation, or whatever way that might be, to check in on the status of the thing you said you're going to do, then you're 95% proven to be more likely to achieve the thing. So accountability is massive. The commitment of saying what you're going to do to somebody else does help you to make it happen. And I think, in terms of what accountability really is, it doesn't have to be working with someone you're paying, like us, a coach. It can be, but it can be a partner, it could be a friend, a work colleague. It could be, maybe a support group. We know there's lots of free different groups out there around, but it is sharing it with someone. That's what accountability isn't, having somebody there to police what it is you're doing. That's not what it is. It's about sharing what you want to do and then following up on that with that person or place that you've shared it to. It could just be that there's a group you're part of and you write it in a post and you say, this month I am going to do this. And because you've put it out there, like I say, that's instilled in your brain, the commitment to doing it, because you've publicly announced it. You don't even know if anybody's read that, but psychologically it still feels like you've told someone. So yeah, accountability can look like different things. It can be working with a coach and following up on that. It can be you having to track it and share that back to someone. But ultimately it's about saying you're going to do it to somebody else in some form and then having that follow up again in whichever form that looks like. So it's huge, and maybe it's, it doesn't have to cost. You can do it with friends, but again, it's got to be what works for you, and we're all individual. There are people that definitely need to have paid. We see that, don't we, that when someone is paid, then they are committed. They've made that contract, psychologically as well as practically, that they're in it now, and some people know that in themselves. They're like, if I don't pay, then it's not going to happen. And you've got other people who are at the opposite end of the scales that can just, share that with their partner and say, just to let you know, I'm doing this, and that's enough. It's going to happen. So yeah, definitely think about how that works for you, and then find the thing that is going to be most powerful in your journey.
Yeah, definitely. I'm certainly someone who needs to pay because, there are so many free resources out there, and many things that I've signed up to and downloaded and never opened or even looked at. But the second I pay for something, I'm in it and I'm committed. I think a lot of people's brains work like that. And I'm also really glad that you shared some really healthy examples of what accountability can look like, because there's some quite negative accountability strategies out there, and certainly people that I've worked with have experienced that, sometimes from a very pushy trainer or someone who really tells them off and shames them when they haven't stuck to what they committed to. And I've had clients say to me, oh God, are you going to tell me off? And it's like, no, because that doesn't help. Like most people, it doesn't help. And actually what we need to do is look at, well, why didn't you follow through with what you were going to do, and how can we change things so that it's even more achievable, or it's more likely that you're going to be able to implement the changes. So I think that's a big part of accountability is the coaching aspect of it as well, and helping someone to be set up for success, as opposed to just shaming them and saying, oh, well, just try harder next time.
Yeah, I actually, when you said that, I know a lot of people who've had that experience, especially when it comes to personal trainers. Yeah, where you've got to, photograph all of your food and write every single thing down. And then there's someone I know locally, and she goes to this some kind of weight loss camp thing with exercise. And if you don't turn up, then you're shamed on the WhatsApp group. And so it's a fear that's instilling it. And as we said, that's not what's going to create the lasting change. While you're in it, you're probably scared to death. So you get yourself along at 6 o'clock in the morning for boot camp. But then once the program's finished, you breathe a sigh of relief and think, thank God I haven't got him checking up on me in the WhatsApp group every day.
Yeah, and I think probably for most women, there's enough shame around food and body image that we need to work on. We don't need that added to by being shamed by, either a weight loss group or a trainer. I think a lot of my clients have felt the same way when they've been to weekly weigh-ins at certain weight loss groups. Not all of them are like that, but I think some leaders of those groups can take that approach. So yeah, it works for some people, but usually if it is working, it's very short term. Like you say, it's not going to lead to that sustainable change, which is what we need to feel good in ourselves and get off that dieting roller coaster. Nicola, it's been so lovely having you on the podcast. It's been such an interesting conversation, and I'm sure that our listeners are going to get a lot from this, and hopefully it will give them the nudge they need to look a little bit deeper and think about what their real why is and how they can start to shift more than just, what they eat and how much they exercise. If people want to find out a little bit more about what you do, how can they connect with you?
So you can connect with me on Instagram as lifenow_coaching or on LinkedIn. So I spend most of my time on Instagram and LinkedIn. Instagram's great because I'm in stories a lot. So just drop me a message and say that you've listened to the podcast and what you've taken away from it. And ultimately, what's one thing that you're going to change? I'd love to know that.
Perfect. And you've got a 5-day challenge that the listeners can access. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the challenge is something that you get in your inbox every day for 5 days to help you start to build your self-worth and know that you can make change. Because as we've shared, that's often a big barrier towards getting off the starting block and creating those new habits, is knowing that you are someone who can make those changes and create that life you want. So yeah, you just get a bit of coaching in your inbox with some tools to work through and really get clear about, how to get started with what your goal is, that why behind it, and knowing that you are absolutely capable of making that happen for you.
Brilliant. That sounds amazing. I definitely encourage everyone to check that out because, I'm sure you can all tell, but Nicola really knows her stuff. Thanks again, Nicola, for joining us, and we'll speak soon.
Yeah, thanks, Louise. It's been great.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I certainly enjoyed recording it.